Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Daily Podcast. Thanks for being here. It is September 3rd. We are in a new month. Exciting times. School is back. I'm going to the 10th grade this year. No, I'm an adult. I'm a grown adult. That was an attempt at a joke real quick off the bat. Hope you guys liked it. No, but it's good to be here. I am coming to you from a different location. You may notice I'm in a different environment here. I'm in Montana. I'm up here for a comedy festival this week. I'm staying in an Airbnb, recording this on Labor Day itself. September 3rd, I think, is the date. September 4th, Monday. And yeah, I drove up here yesterday. It's been a long last week. I guess I'm in between. I was in the Midwest a week ago. Had a week in Denver, and now I'm back on the road in a new state, Montana. It's a very cold, rainy day. It's like in the 50s. It's been raining. I got here yesterday after a long drive. 10 hours in the car, which I was tired. I mean, that's a long time in the car, but I feel like I've been doing a lot of long drives over the last couple of years and gotten a little bit more used to it. But yeah, it took it out of me, man. I was not. I was struggling the last couple of hours a little bit to get through it, but here we are. I'll tell you what I did. Guys, and I'm curious to hear your input and if you have ever done this or what your experience is. But I bought my first audiobook. I bought Dune. And here's the deal. Dune, I've read already. If you're not familiar, it's like a pretty big sci-fi. It's kind of one of the bigger ones, I think, if you Google top sci-fi books. I read it about 2 years ago, and the movie came out, actually. It's a two-part. They split the book into two movies. First one came out 2021. Next one, part 2, is coming out end of this year, November. And I'll be honest with you guys, I kind of forgot what happened. Pretty much completely. I remember, there's a bunch of sand, there's a harsh planet, and there's Timothy Chalamet. And that's from the movie, so that doesn't even count. But I was thinking about rereading it, and I was going to, but then I actually bought Dune Book 2 and 3. So I was like, I don't know, it could take me 6 months to read this book again. I'm already reading a couple other books. Let's listen to the audiobook. I'll do that. I'll knock that out on this 10-hour drive. I'll be ready to read those other books, and we'll all move forward in life. But here's the deal. I looked it up. I don't know why I keep saying here's the deal. Here's the deal, folks. I'm in Montana, and I'm in an Airbnb that's a trailer. It's pretty nice inside, though. It feels like up here there's a lot of trailers. I don't know if that's a more common thing, but I like it. It's nice inside. Nothing against It's the main difference is a lot of times you see trailers and they're in like trailer parks and the surrounding area and kind of the upkeep of the buildings. It's kind of grimy looking, and a lot of people see that and they, maybe unrightfully look down upon that. I have nothing against trailers. This is a trailer, but it's like on its own land. Well, there's a big warehouse behind me, some shop. I don't know what it is exactly, but I've noticed a lot of trailers out here, but it's like trailer neighborhoods, not like a trailer park. So whatever that means, that's my trailer rant. It's pretty nice. I got a nice couch here. I'm going to be working here for the week. I've got my crock pot going, a pork tenderloin in there. There's a bathroom, a bedroom, a TV, Wi-Fi. Yeah, I mean, what else could you ask for? Anyways, trailer. I don't even know how I got on that. But driving up here, I was going to listen to Dune. I did buy Dune, But when I looked into it, $35 for a book that I already have just to re-listen. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. That's too much. That's too expensive. But then I was like, you know what? It's 10 hours. Let's do it. Let's impulse buy this Dune audiobook. And what did it for me, and this is what I want to hear from you guys. If you listen to audiobooks, I'm curious to hear because I haven't listened to any. I'm not real familiar. But I thought, and I still think this is probably the case, but I thought audiobooks was just like one person reading it, which I think is the case. But for this one, and I think why this Dune audiobook was so expensive is because they've got like a different voice for different characters. And then and then they've got like background music to like give it a certain vibe, an ominous vibe in a lot of spots. So I was like, you know what? That might not be too bad. Also, the book is 21 hours long to read. So I can see a little price being on that. Either way, in my head, I go, look, 21 hours, 10 hours up, 10 hours back. I'll basically knock it down on that drive. Once you get on the road, 10 hours of anything, whether it's one genre of music, whether it's one podcast, whatever it is, that's a little too much. I probably listened to 3 hours of it on the way up. I got, I don't know, a tenth of the way through, a ninth and eighth of the way through, whatever the math is. But starting to come back, the terms, things like that. So hopefully we'll see if I've got time. I don't know if this week I'll have time to listen to it. But hopefully I can get through it so I can start the other books. I've been reading a little bit, dabbling in some books. I'll talk about that a little bit later, though. Coming up, the drive. I don't know if you guys have been to Montana before, but I guess the Rockies come up here, which makes sense. I probably should have known that. But yeah, a lot of mountains you come up by. The drive, pretty uneventful. I mean, it was kind of boring going through Wyoming. Like, there's not much going through Wyoming. There's more stuff on the western side of Wyoming, and I was going up the eastern side for the most part. So there's not much landscape and not much happening. And in Montana, there wasn't much. Well, there might have been some mountains because I kind of entered the eastern side of the state, and then I'm in Bozeman. So I went west after entering from Wyoming. But there's some nice mountains out here. First time in Montana. I'm in Belgrade technically, but the festival is going to be in Bozeman, so it's like 15 minutes away. I chose here because this was the cheapest Airbnb. It's like $130 a night. I'm here for a week. Do the math. It's not that cheap. But everything's very expensive here as far as lodging. I didn't realize. I guess it makes sense if this is kind of like a destination spot for people. But yeah, I came in, did the 10-hour drive yesterday, got in, did some grocery shopping. Here's the deal also. I've talked about my diet quite a bit. Ad nauseum, some people would say. What's that word mean? I'm pretty sure I used it right. So look it up. Let me know. But drove up here. I had a couple snacks, but I didn't really prepare super well. I kind of had a lot going on, so I didn't have that much time to. I had like some cashews, some apples, but I didn't have any like real heavy stuff. So I just kind of nibbled on some cashews, and that I think was it. And I don't know if you guys have ever had cashews before. Love them, but if you're just eating cashews, you hit a point where you go, I need food, but I don't want any more cashews. And that's kind of where I was yesterday. Got in about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Had a headache. It's one of those where you don't want to drink too much and pee every 5 minutes on the road. But also, you need to drink. It's kind of that weird in-between thing you got to do. So I had a headache. I went shopping. The grocery store here is Albertsons. Nice little grocery store. I liked it. Felt at home. Felt cozy. I don't know if that's a big chain. It looks like it probably is. But I loaded up, got $100 worth of groceries, which I was like, whoa, that feels like a lot. But also, I'm here for a week. So that's, I guess, kind of spot on. But got a lot of stuff. Came home, ate some Wagyu. I got American Wagyu burgers, which I don't think I've ever had those before. And the only thing I know about Wagyu beef is that it's like super expensive. I'll tell you what, this was American Wagyu, and it was not that. It was like 3 solid patties for $10, which isn't, I guess, as cheap as some stuff, but it's not that expensive. So I was like, ooh, fancy dinner to give myself a little treat after a 10-hour drive. Let's go Wagyu, American Wagyu. And you know what? I cooked those up. I ate them. Nothing special. Honestly, not that great, if I'm being honest. It was pretty forgettable, but I had that, had some broccoli, had a tomato and mozzarella cheese, some balsamic vinegar, and that headache went away a little bit. And here we are. Yeah, the reason I left so early yesterday, I left at like 6 a.m. because it was a 10-hour drive. I was trying to get here because I had a fantasy football draft. And, if you guys play fantasy football, you got to be present for that. If you auto pick, then your team's going to stink, and also you're not going to care about your team. So I was trying to get up here in time for a 7 p.m. draft. I knew I'd probably get in and probably want to go grocery shopping, maybe take a shower, or just kind of like have an hour or two before the draft to get my bearings, get on the Wi-Fi. I brought my laptop and my an extra computer screen because I'll be working throughout the week. And so I set that up with like the fantasy rankings, and I had it all. I don't watch as much football. I'm starting to realize that I used to be a huge football fan. When I was a kid, I was very into sports. That's all I had. I've said it before. When you don't have cable as a kid, sports is kind of the only thing you've got. And so I was very, very into sports. Sorry, I heard a dog barking. It's raining outside. A dog is barking, and I'm in unknown territory. Okay, you got to have your high alerts on. But used to be a big fan of football. Growing up, Virginia Tech, the football team, most of my family went there. And that was a college football team that I lived or died by. The Washington Commanders was, being from Virginia, that was kind of like the closest team. I wasn't as big a fan of them as I was Virginia Tech, but also a big fan of them. And, Sundays were football days, and then, basketball, other sports I would watch all the time too. And I would get very invested and lose sleep if my team lost, and I knew all the players, I collected the cards, I was very into it. And now, I kind of feel like a fraud. Like, we're doing this fantasy draft, and people are talking about, oh yeah, I had my sheet listed on who I was going to pick, and this new person, they came in, they were drafted this round, they're for this team, they played for this college, and I'm like, I don't know any of these people. I'm like, where's Brett Favre, That's like the last time I paid attention to football. It was back when Brett Favre hit his head on the ground and retired from football. And now he's like 80 years old. He's not 80. He's like 55. And apparently he's in some legal trouble for some money laundering in Mississippi. Which, if I'm being honest, is a state I don't know anything about. The Mississippi River. That when people count seconds, sometimes they say Mississippi after. And, Mississippi, people say they spell it out with the little sing-song thing. The Mississippi. That was a fun thing as a kid. Those are the 3 facts about Mississippi that I know. There's a river, you can spell it with a song, and sometimes people say it after saying the seconds. So you know what? Some people say this podcast isn't that funny, but there's a little bit of informative information in case you guys were curious about the state of Mississippi. What's the capital? Jackson. That's my guess. I don't know. Honestly, that's the only city in Mississippi that I can name, and I'm not 100% sure that's even a city in Mississippi. So I just retracted all the information. I was like, this is an informative podcast, and I immediately went into me just backtracking and being like, I don't know anything. But yeah, drove up yesterday, did the fantasy draft, felt pretty good about it. Honestly, I couldn't name too many players. I wanted to get Patrick Mahomes as quarterback. I've had him the last couple seasons. He's done very well for me. Quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He gets a lot of points. And I did not get him. I opted to go running back a couple of the first rounds. And then I think I got Joe Burrow, maybe in the 4th round or something like that. So I was okay with that. I'm pretty satisfied with my team. There's a lot of players that I'm not super familiar with. A lot of younger players, I think. So it'll give me good reason to watch some games this winter and get into it a little bit more maybe. But I digress. This is not a football podcast. This is not Ethan Everhart's podcast, okay? I'll limit it to 2 minutes of football. That was yesterday. That was Sunday. It is now Labor Day. And I am here in Montana. I was going to explore the city, but most stuff is closed down today, I guess, for Labor Day. I wanted to get a haircut and look good for my trailer Airbnb. Couldn't do it. Everything's closed. I went to get coffee this morning. Closed. So I had to go to the Starbucks inside of Albertsons. You know, whatever. I guess I'll support Italy. Is that where Starbucks is from? Italy? No, it's from Seattle, isn't it? Italy. I don't know why. You know what? Over the last 3 minutes, I've just said dumber and dumber things. I was like, let me give some informative facts, and then I'm just like slipping some pretty dumb comments out. But that's to be expected on this podcast too. Maybe I can corner the market with just like, this person, you should listen to his podcast because he rambles and says like so much stupid stuff. Which would probably be a good kind of like overview of what this podcast is, if I'm being honest. But one thing I've noticed on the drive up here and driving around a little bit, I guess Montana has a lot of casinos around. I guess gambling is legal here. I don't understand. Actually, I'm really unfamiliar with casinos and what's legal, what's not legal. Like, over the last couple years, I've been hit with a lot of scenarios where there's casinos around, and I don't fully get it. Because growing up on the East Coast in Virginia, and obviously laws have changed over time, but I think it may just be state by state, and maybe I grew up in states where it wasn't legal, but it's more common out here. But in Virginia, I don't think there were any. I'm pretty certain there weren't any casinos. The only thing I knew of growing up was Vegas, and then I think like Atlantic City. Are there casinos there? I think that was like a place. But coming out to Colorado, moving out to Colorado, there's like Black Hawk, which is I think a gambling city. I'm assuming it's legal, considering it's pretty well known. But where else? I feel like driving through Oklahoma. I'm pretty sure some casinos, and they're not the big, like, you know, growing up, you think of the big casinos like Vegas, or just like a big thing. But these are kind of sad, to be honest. A lot of them, it's just like a gas station casino combo where you're like, ugh, what? People stopping to get gas and then throwing money in the slot machine? I don't know. I guess so. Also saw one last week coming home, driving through South Dakota, and then now in Montana. And I might go check one out. I've got maybe throw some cash down, get the casino experience. That could be fun. I've never been much for gambling. I've never really. I know it's getting bigger, especially online with sports stuff. I've never bet that I can remember on or cared too much to bet on sport. The only times I've ever done. Here's one more thing. I'm all over the place, guys. Just bear with me. I'll get to it. Wow, this couch. I feel like I'm having to take deep breaths. It's kind of chilly in here, so I've got layers on. I don't know if I feel constricted. But I also went to Cleveland one time and went to a casino there. I don't even know if it was called a casino. It had slot machines. Maybe, I don't know if there's a loophole where it's like an adult arcade. I'm pretty sure it was a casino. But that's one of the only times I did. The only time before that, like growing up, playing golf, uh, that's like a very common sport for people to bet on. You go play and people are like, all right, let's bet $10 a hole, or you have different games. You have a bunch of variations of betting that's pretty popular among golfers. Growing up, I never was super into that. A lot of people like to bet and they like to drink on the golf course. I never did really either. Even though I played a ton of golf, I was very much like, I gotta play as good as I can, and betting and alcohol prohibit me from scoring well. I think that was my mindset. But I do remember a couple times, like I have bet a handful of times, but it wasn't the norm. And I remember one time when I was a junior, like under 18, I was probably like 15 or 16. But I played at a golf course called London Downs, close to my neighborhood growing up. And where my high school team played, kind of on the opposite side of the city, was called Ivy Hills. And they are like so at London Downs, I played with like a group of there's like 10-ish juniors, and we'd all go out, especially during the summer, and we play a lot. And it was very much just like, let's go play golf. Let's just go play traditional golf. We can go practice and have fun and talk and blah, blah, blah. But at Ivy Hill, their group of juniors, of kids playing golf there, it was a lot more, I think, part of that culture, just part of the norm to bet. And one time I went and played over there. I don't know if it might have been like before high school tryouts, but I was playing against two kids that were like, I was very small and naive, and I don't know, I was intimidated by a lot of people, but it was me and one other person, and we were betting. We were approached, and these people said, let's putt for money on the putting green. So long story short, I remember we got to negative $33. We were down $33, and that's where it ended. And I remember being like that was a huge deal, having to pay out $33. Like that was like, I've made a massive mistake. And that's funny to think back on, like $33. I just mentioned I bought Dune audiobook on a book I've already read for more than that. So it's good to be doing a little bit better than those days. Back when I was a lifeguard making $6 an hour, you go, good Lord, dude. That's a day of work. A day of work would be 6 hours. 6 times 6, 36. Minus taxes, that's more than a day of work. It was a big deal, dude. I was like, ugh. It was frightening to me. But those were, I used to play on the golf team in high school. I've talked about this. I've received comments to speak less about golf. But those were weird days where you're like, you're trying to play. Golf was the only sport that I played where there was, I was exposed to some shenanigans, I guess. Not necessarily, but what I mean by that is playing most of these other sports, you're not exposed to alcohol and tobacco and whatever. You're practicing probably at the high school, and you're in kind of a confined space. Whereas golf, you're on, you're on a massive like amount of land. You're walking, and I guess it just makes it easier to be in an area where people can smoke, drink, whatever. So I remember that was like the first time, being around people who were doing that. And I was a very sheltered, naive kid. So you're like, whoa, these kids are drinking and smoking and doing this and that. It was, and then also there was like, that was the only team I played on in high school that had a culture of initiation, kind of like frats in college. It wasn't anything extreme at all, but right before I got on the team, the like class before me, the initiation, from what I heard, was pretty abusive. So I remember being like kind of scared about that, and I remember one time playing a round of golf and finding a can of dip in a pond, and I did not know. I don't think I had any, but somebody in the group that I played with they were the pouches, and they put it in, and it wasn't until later that I like understood what dip was, how people like, just what the whole deal is with dip and tobacco. There was probably a couple pouches in there. It was already opened, and it was in a dirty pond, and the person put it in. And it wasn't until later in my life that I was like, oh, those were for sure used pouches that somebody disposed of into a dirty pond. And then one of the, 16-year-old idiots in my golf group was like, let's be naughty and try this used dip that is in brown water. Yuck. Yikes. That's what you do when you're a teenager. You do a lot of stuff where you go, that was regrettable. That was not super smart. And you live and you learn. But that was the golf team. That was, just what happens when you golf. But yeah. So with that said, there's kind of the little random intro. Random rambling. You guys, first off, I would like to say appreciate the people who have commented over the last couple weeks. Thank you for that. Keep commenting, please. If you have any recommendations, I know people have mentioned in the past, less golf. Try to keep the golf short there. I've heard that might be the only recommendation, honestly. If you guys have recommendations on what I should talk about, things like that, just let me know. But yeah, I'll phase into the comedy portion here, talk about where I've been and what I've got coming up, what I've been doing. I obviously last week I talked about getting back from the Midwest, did a run of shows in the Midwest, which was really fun. Had this last week in Denver, which was also very fun. By the way, this couch, I'm real handsy, I feel like, on the podcast, and this couch is just kind of pushing me forward. I feel out of breath. I don't feel the freedom to flip my hands around. So maybe that's better. Maybe that's less distracting to watch, but I like to talk with my hands, I think, on the podcast to demonstrate what I mean. I do a lot of left and right, and that's visually doesn't provide any additional value, honestly, now that I say it out loud. But this last week has been fun. Went out to a couple of open mics, and then I had a couple shows Thursday through Saturday, which were very fun. Thursday I did a show in Longmont at Left Hand Brewing, which was a good time. Fun show up there. And then I went down back to Denver quickly for Odell Brewing, which is a show I run, co-produced with another comic. Monthly show, last Thursday of the month. And it's been an up and down show. We've been doing it for like the last year. And it's in if you're familiar with Denver, it's in the Rhino 5 Points area off Larimer Street, a very common, popular kind of downtown, very walkable neighborhood. And we've gotten people out to it. Like, people have come out to it fairly consistently, but it's been a very hit or miss, mostly miss response as far as people going to the show and then people just really not laughing. That, I don't know, it's one of those weird things where the room is nice. It's an upstairs portion of the brewery, so it's a separate space. You get like a young crowd, you fill it out decently, people are drinking, and then you just go, nobody's really laughing. Is comedy even real? It's a strange thing, and that's happened quite a few times where you get people out there and you just go, man, I can't crack this room. I don't know what's going on. And obviously, in the lineups, we have very funny comedians, and kind of across the board, it's been tough. But with that said, this last Thursday, was the best show yet by far. It was very fun. It filled out. The room was full. We moved the setup a little bit, just slightly. And I think it helped to connect with the crowd a little bit better. So excited for that moving forward. Hopefully that will help things out. But everybody literally crushed. The crowd was super hot. The last comic, good buddy, very funny dude, Jeff Nelson. I don't throw many people's names out on this podcast, but I feel okay doing this because this is mad props. Jeff is hilarious. And he ripped so hard. Legitimately, like, the best I've seen anyone do in that room ever. And just, one of the better sets I've seen a local comic do, especially when it comes to, he did like 20, 25 minutes. So one of the better sets I've seen locally for a long set as well, where he just had people, he had the room in the palm of his hand and was just hitting them with haymakers, had them rolling. There was like, it's mostly young people, but there was one group of like 40 or 45, 50-year-olds. So they were kind of the outliers as far as the age there, but they were dying. And not everybody else was dying, but it was funny because they were like losing their mind in a comical way. So it was like a little more apparent than the other people that were just, laughing very loud, but in a normal way. But yeah, he ripped so hard. That was fun to watch. Motivating to watch too. Whenever somebody gets them in like just kind of a trance and just whatever they say, the crowd is into it. And that's like that doesn't happen that often, where you connect in a way that's much deeper and more effective than, we do a lot of shows where people are laughing. It's fine. It's fun. Sometimes you go, yeah, I crushed as well. But then sometimes you're up there and you can see it too from like a comic's perspective, watching another comic, where you go, oh, they got them. They're, whatever they say, it doesn't matter. Like you pull them into such a connection where you have them under such a trance that you go, it doesn't matter what they say. They cannot fail. Whatever they say, the audience is going to lose their mind because they're like synced up in a very, if you talk about the behind the scenes stuff with comedy, that's a thing that I talked about with Jeremy Cash when I did a podcast with him. But it's a very interesting thing to try to dissect and look at and go, man, how'd you do that? How'd you get them on that same wavelength to just have everything you say crushed? I'm sure, if you don't do comedy, I'm sure you have experiences in your life where maybe you're at a party or a gathering with friends and you're telling a story or whatever, and once in a while you'll just have everybody that's on board wanting to listen, and you just feel the freedom to kind of say whatever, and it's just hitting. You're like, whoa, I feel, you feel like Mario when he eats one of those mushrooms or one of those like stars. And you just go, man, I am glowing with jokes that didn't make sense. I was trying to relate when you eat the star and you glow and you're invincible. But you do feel invincible. It's cool. It's cool to have happen. Doesn't happen that often. It's very cool to see it happen. So yeah, that was a very, very fun show on Thursday at Odell. So looking forward to that show moving forward with a couple of the changes that we made. Hopefully can make that room be fun more consistently moving forward. But then on Friday, I went down, did a show in Colorado Springs. Actually opened up for a comic out of New York. Very funny guy, Ben Miller, also named Ben. Got synced up with him. Fortunately, some mutual friends threw my name out there, and I was open and available. Happy to do it. It was fun. We went down to Vultures in Colorado Springs, which is like a punk rock venue, which was funny because Ben Miller, his show, he tours around and does a show called Stand Up Science. And it's basically, he does like a PowerPoint and does, it's stand up. He's doing jokes, but it's kind of surrounding science topics. So it's like a very unique, interesting show. And, you know, he advertises and gets crowds to come see him. A lot of times the crowds are, you know, more into science, whether they're teachers or studying in school, whatever the case. You know, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but kind of on the nerdier side, which was funny because it was a punk rock venue. So it's funny seeing like all those people coming in like to this kind of grimy punk rock venue. Very cool venue though. It was like 50 people. I mean, it was pretty much sold out, packed out at like 50, and a cool room, cool ambiance environment. The crowd was super hot. They were super fun. So that was a great time. Did that show on Friday, and then actually opened for them again on Saturday in Denver at a place called Woods Boss Brewing, which is downtown area right beside Mercury Cafe, if you're familiar with the Denver area. I'd never done this room before. There's a brewery, and they just opened like what they're calling the Lodge, which is a separate room that's basically, I guess they just rent it out for special occasions. So I'm sure whether that's music, comedy, people probably do it for wedding receptions or whatever. There's a bar in there. But that was also a very fun show. That one was sold out, about 75 people. And yeah, got to do 15 minutes for both of those shows. I felt good about the jokes, working through kind of a newer, I've talked about it before, but working on some newer chunks. They're not necessarily new jokes that I've come up with in the last couple weeks, but over the last couple months, kind of trying to put together some topics that I've kind of got a little nugget of something, and then take the parts that have been working and kind of cram it together, these jokes into chunks. So if you're not familiar with what a chunk is, I'll give you an example. I've been over the last 6 months or so written a joke about pre-workout supplements, a joke about running, a joke about jumping jacks, and more so recently a joke about being small, like growing up and being the smallest kid in my grade. And what I've done is I've basically just put those all together into one chunk, and it's kind of all surrounding one topic, which is exercise. Obviously, being small isn't about exercising, but I start with that joke, and then I kind of lead into the pre-workout portion by saying, like, I've always been small, but, I'd like to get bigger. I've been trying to work out more, and then that kind of leads into the rest of the chunk. So you kind of have like a 5-minute chunk there from all these different jokes that you've kind of found a way to merge together and make sense in kind of the storyline of your set, which is very common, with comedy. The longer I've done it, the more I see the importance of kind of the set list and where you put certain jokes. Not only because you want to, there's a ton of reasons. One is you want to like start out with certain jokes. It's important to like start out strong and then start out kind of with something that represents how the rest of your set's going to be. For example, if you start out with like for me, I do mostly clean comedy. I'm not cursing much. I'm not, talking about many divisive topics at all. So if I had like one dirty joke, it would be weird and not a good idea for me to do one dirty joke as the opener if the rest of my set is going to be pretty clean. So again, maybe if I have that dirty joke and I'm trying to do it, maybe I start out and then do it much later in the set to get some rapport with the audience and kind of have them on my side before I throw them what they could perceive as a curveball. Same thing if you're like a one-liner comic or not a one-liner comic, you want to kind of, how you start, you kind of want to start with something that kind of helps represent how you'll be for the rest of the set. And then also another reason, like I was just mentioning earlier, especially if you're doing longer sets, it becomes a little bit more important, at least in my mind, to have a good flow of jokes. So, having these chunks that I mentioned, putting these topics together and getting a chunk about exercise and it kind of fits together naturally. I've started to do more of that than in the past. When you're doing 5 or 10 minute sets, it's not as important. You kind of hop around and just tell jokes. But when you're doing 30 plus minutes, if you're doing 45-second, minute long jokes, and you have 30 of those and those topics are completely different and you're just bouncing around, that's a lot for a crowd's and audience member's brain to deal with. And I know personally for myself, I lose interest if, I don't know, probably around 15 minutes or so, if someone's kind of bouncing around and it's totally random, my brain struggles to stay connected with that. So if you have a bunch of jokes, but you can manage to put them together in a chunk and kind of make it seem like it's the same topic so people are kind of along for that ride, the ebbs and flows and figuring out a set list that's appropriate is an important thing, I think, for those longer sets for sure. So that's been a recent thing I've worked on, which I did over the last week, and it's been good. I feel like I've gotten some good feedback on ones that are working well, ones that aren't working as well, and I've done some work on cutting stuff and just going, hey, this isn't working as well. I don't need that. Just get to the joke, and kind of condensing it to as good as I can get. And I feel pretty good with that. And I've talked about my running joke that I've done. I don't think I've like said the joke per se because I don't want to give it away, the hot running joke. But I was working actually this morning. I'm trying to be better with writing more. I've been doing a lot of editing. So still writing, but I've been doing a lot of like recycling old ideas and going through and adding and subtracting. I'm trying to get back in the routine of like every day, pen to paper, new subject, or whether it's a new or old subject, pen to paper, write down new ideas, try to write new jokes, because you just got to constantly, you just got to put out, you got to write so much because a lot of it's not going to be good, and you just want to keep progressing. If you want to keep getting better, you got to keep flexing that muscle. But I was trying to write more this morning about running, adding on to my joke. It's about a minute 30, 2-minute joke at the moment, and it's pretty good, but it's got some fat on the bones that could definitely be erased. So I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to add more jokes in there and make it just more efficient. Because as it is, again, if you're a comedian, then you understand. If you're not a comedian, I'll try to break it down. It's a joke that's about 2 minutes long, and it's got about 3 paragraphs, kind of 3 sections to the joke. So each section is roughly 45 seconds. I know that doesn't quite add up, but for this 40 seconds. There we go. There's perfect math. And in comedy, you know, a big part is like, how many laughs per minute are you getting? Okay, and a big kind of, I guess what a lot of people are looking for is you're looking for a laugh as often as possible, obviously, but I think at a maximum, you want to get a laugh like every 15 seconds probably. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a laugh every 15 seconds. What a lot of times it comes down to is maybe you're telling a story, maybe you're telling a joke where the setup takes a little bit longer. And that's this exact example for me that I'm talking about. This running joke, 2 out of the 3 paragraphs that I just mentioned, they take like 30 seconds to get the setup out to then get to the joke, which is much longer than the 15 seconds that I just mentioned. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you have a punchline and then tags for the joke. If you're not familiar with tags, they're basically just extensions to the punchline. So you do punchline, get a laugh, and then you say another sentence, get a laugh, and then maybe another sentence, and you try to do that as many times. And so if you're taking 30 seconds to set something up, you're building this tension kind of in my mind and what a lot of people, you know, say you should do, and I agree 100%. If you're going to take longer to get to that punchline, you need to make sure you have payoff, not just on the punchline, but multiple tags. So if you have multiple tags, say it takes 40 seconds to set something up, and then you say the punchline, and then you say 2 tags in the next, 20 seconds. That's 60 seconds, 3 laughs. That's technically a laugh every 20 seconds if you do the math, but obviously it's not like every 20 seconds you're actually getting a laugh. You're going 40 seconds, and then you're getting 3 laughs over the next 20 seconds. So hopefully I didn't lose you guys with that math. I think I explained it, but also I was saying a lot of math in seconds and laughs per minute. But that's what I'm trying to do with this running bit, where it takes a little bit longer to get to the punchline. And what I need to do is either I need to get more efficient and get to the punchline quicker. I've struggled with that. So now it's like I need to make sure, in my mind, I want that punchline and 2 good tags. And for 2 of the paragraphs, one specifically, I have the punchline, which works, and the tags have not been working. So not only do I, like I said, I want to have 2 tags, so 3 jokes in total for that paragraph. I don't even have the 1 tag that's been working consistently. So that is something that I'm trying to fill a gap for. And then I'm also trying to add on just other topics surrounding running, just to dive deeper and explore, see if I can find some other fun stuff. So that is a joke that I've been working on, an older joke that I'm trying to add on to. Also wrote this morning about museums and my, I don't want to say hatred, but I don't like museums. They're just boring, and I wish I liked them. I'm trying to find out a way to make it funny where, like, I write about every time I go into a museum, it's like, I don't know if you guys have this with foods. I think the only food example I can give is olive. But for whatever reason, for like the first 25 years of my life, I saw olives out at a party on a charcuterie board or whatever type of platter they come on. And for some reason, it's like the only food in my life I've ever looked at, and I had tried up to that point, hated them, but for some reason in my mind, like I wanted to like them. It was kind of the same thing with Guinness beer for me, to be honest. I remember buying Guinness beer for the first time in these nice bottles and being like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I drank it. It was disgusting, and I kept retrying it over time because it's like I wanted to like it. It looked so good for some reason in my brain. That's olives for me. But the thing with olives is I kept trying, and over time, I learned to love them. My point is, I feel like I've tried to do that with museums and have not been successful. I will go to them and I'll go, this will be the time that I'm going to be patient and appreciative of history and culture and just learning things about something I don't know. And every single time I get in there, I pay money, I get about 7 minutes in, and I go, I'm ready to go home. You know, you look at the people you're with and you kind of try to do that thing like, are you ready too? And they're like, we've got 2 more hours. We've got 7 more levels of arrowheads and grass huts and boring documentary videos from 1975. That's another thing. What are museums doing? Okay, YouTube, TikTok, all these platforms that are popular now that keep our attention, that are interesting. You got a 12-year-old who can edit a history video and keep my attention and be like, whoa, that was really cool. Documentaries on Netflix, very well done, very intriguing, very cool. You go to a museum, you go, dude, you're showing the documentaries that were in schools when my parents went to school. I mean, it's black and white. You're like, what are you doing? The museum industry is going to die if you don't address that, okay? So to all my museum manager friends, which is 0 people, look into that, would you? I want to like museums. I really do. I want to be open and cultured and smarter about topics I don't know about, but could you help me out? Come on. I mean, I've said it before. I'm eating ground beef and broccoli. I've never eaten healthier. My focus is about as good as it can get. And even at that, I can't look at your pottery anymore, okay? I can't pretend that a half-broken piece of pottery is cool. I'm sorry. I want to like it. I do. But you got to help me. You got to meet me in the middle. Okay? Have a half piece of pottery with, some dubstep playing in the background or something. Give me some reason to have some emotion other than hatred towards dirt that made a shape. All right. Well, I ended on a pretty negative note here. Museums, if you like them, I respect that. I want to like them too. I need to get better at, I feel like art in general, I've come around a little bit. I don't own much art. This Airbnb has a piece of art here. I should get some art. I feel like I'm coming around. Haven't come around yet on museums. With that said, leave me a comment. Tell me why I should come around on museums, what I need to do to better appreciate walking through a museum. How do you prepare for your museum? Are you guys, is there a ritual I should go through? Should I meditate before? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know, again, if you've enjoyed this, if there's something else I should talk about. I feel like it took me 45 minutes to get into a rambling state about museums. I don't know if that ramble was entertaining, but apologies if it was a slow incline to some form of entertainment. But again, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, really appreciate you guys. And I'll see you guys again next week.